requested him many times, so he is very busy. So after his job from New Market, Richmond, you work far away from here. So Vaughan. So he come all the way from there after the job. So he grows mushrooms in his farm. He has all the stuff to provide, to sell, and he can explain how to set up your mini mushroom house at home. So as I gave some lectures like on, to go ahead please.
Thank you. So once again, my name is Calvin. I run a farm in Brampton called Indigicap Shrooms. Originally, I was a chef for about 13 years, and then kind of COVID gave me a kick in the bum, and I had to find something else to do, of course. Sitting at home, not really knowing what to do. I had 2 daughters at the time. I spent a lot of time on YouTube, and I self-taught myself mycology through various videos and self-practice. So I've been cultivating for 4 years. You can find me on the weekends at Georgetown Farmers Market during the summer, and in the off times I've been doing workshops and selling various things here. So mushrooms. After about 2 years, I told myself I'm teaching myself some pretty advanced microbiology just at home in my bathroom. And so it starts on a petri dish. I make these from scratch. I make my own nutrient agar. I have to do it as sterile as possible because the bacteria will kind of ruin everything that you're doing. So bacteria and mold, 2 different organisms. Bacteria being a single-celled organism that replicates itself to grow more bacteria, and mold is a fungi, like mushrooms, that replicates itself through spores.
You explain in English, then I will translate after.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And the difference between a mushroom and mold is that a mold spore is able to create a new culture on its own, whereas a mushroom spore has to have 2 different spores germinate and find each other to create mycelium. And the 2 different mycelium create a hybrid, kind of like a child, where you have the father and the mother creates its own DNA, which means that each mushroom can be DNA sequenced. It has its own family tree, its own cross species, just like people. And this is generally why a lot of people say that mushrooms are closer to people than it is to plants. It has its own lineage. And with its own lineage, it has its own culture, its own way of cultivating the world, just like us.
इन्होंने बताया कि ये मशरूम एक फंगस है. कई लोग डरते नहीं खाते इसको कि पता नहीं क्या है. इट्स नॉट ए प्लांट, इट्स ए फंगस. सो जैसे हरी सब्जियां, एल्गी है, कुछ भी हरा है तो वो सूरज से रोशनी लेके वो सिंथेसाइज करता है फूड. तो ये फंगस कैन नॉट सिंथेसाइज इट्स ओन फूड. अपना खुराक अपने आप नहीं बना सकता, तो इसको हम सप्लाई करते हैं, सबस्ट्रेट उसमें उगाते हैं. वो है.
So, if you were to get into cultivation for yourself, there's 3 different ways you can enter mycology. The first is to start from a syringe here. You have to find yourself, the culture yourself online or from somebody like from me. And this is the fungus kind of suspended in a nutrient broth in the syringe here. And what you would do is you would kind of sterilize your own grain. This is brown rice, but you can also use whole wheat, rye berries, something with like a whole grain. That's the main nutrient source for the fungus. It's kind of like if you forget to put the rice in the fridge and then it gets moldy. The mold likes to eat the complex sugars in the rice. And it's the same thing with the mushroom fungus.
ये जो एगर एगर है आर्टिफिशियल, ये जो डालते हैं ये एल्गी से बनता है, जो होती है ना एल्गी, काई जिसको कहते हैं, तो उससे बनता है। ये स्टरलाइज करके रखते हैं। तो इसमें ये स्पोर है, जो कण है, जो सीड कह सकते हैं फंगस का, मशरूम का, उसको इनाकुलेट करते हैं जैसे कोई और फंगस और बैक्टीरिया और जरासीम कोई इसमें नाम जाए, ओनली मशरूम ही ग्रो करे। तो इसके लिए ये इनाकुलेट करते हैं सिरिंज के साथ, और स्टरलाइज जो एटमॉस्फेयर है इनाकुलेशन करते हैं, तो और फंगस बैक्टीरिया कोई और ऑर्गेनिज्म ना ग्रो कर जाए, इसलिए। Go ahead.
Yeah. There's ways you can do it sterile at home. If you're going to start from a syringe, you're going to need what's called a still air box. If you watch how pharmaceuticals work, it's where they have the gloves in that box and they work in an area where air doesn't circulate so that it doesn't contaminate. You can do this at home with just a big storage container on your counter. My very first time using a syringe was actually in the middle of my kitchen while my wife was cooking dinner. And some college kids, they're doing this in their dorm, and they grow mushrooms underneath their beds. Exactly. The second place you can start if you don't want to do any sterile work is you can buy colonized grain. So at this point in the process, this has already happened where this has been fully colonized with a syringe or the agar. And so you skip that process and you just buy it from here. And if you were to start here, you would have to prepare your own substrate, which is pasteurizing something like straw or sawdust. And you would break up the spawn here and you would layer it in a bag like this. You can also use like a Ziploc bag. You can use a shopping bag. I've seen some people use pantyhose. You can use an old t-shirt. And you would soak the straw or the sawdust in hot water to pasteurize. And then you would layer it with a spawn like a lasagna, like alternating the layers. And then when that fully colonizes, you would cut the bag and then it would grow out the side. Or you would leave it in your garden and you would water it like you water your plants. And that's a way you can get into farming at home if you want to grow mushrooms that way. The last way that you can get into mycology is if you skip that process and you go straight to the bags here. This is how I commercially farm all my mushrooms, is in these bags. So in here is sterilized sawdust, and I supplement it with some extra nutrients to make more of a yield. And in my sterile environment, I open the bag and I break up the spawn here and I sprinkle it in, seal the bag, and now you can kind of see the mushrooms already starting to grow at this top here. Lastly, you would cut a hole and the mushrooms kind of pop out the side. And that's kind of the whole process.
Is it a fertilizer you add to it?
The only fertilizer that's in here is I add more rice. There's no chemicals.
Brown rice.
Yeah, brown rice.
Brown basmati will do.
Brown basmati should work, yes, absolutely. Same with I like using rye, whole rye berries, or even popcorn works. Mushrooms, they don't metabolize sucrose or glucose. They only like the dextrose and dextrin from malt sugars and such.
One thing I would like to ask you, can we grow it in this way season? No.
Absolutely. Inside, yeah. Inside. So, kind of circling back to mushrooms being closer to people than plants are, mushrooms like to inhale oxygen and they'll exhale CO2. And so if the CO2 is too high, they grow skinny and leggy. You can kind of see in the bag here, if you can see it properly, they don't really look like mushrooms. They look like little fingers. And so in the wild, when a mushroom colonizes a piece of wood, it usually grows from the center of the wood where there's no air. And it's going to grow very skinny and long to try to find the outside of the log where the air is. And when it finds the oxygen, that's when the mushroom opens up fully. So inside these bags here, it's almost as if it's inside the middle of that log. It's searching for the oxygen. And you can actually, if you take a closer look at the bag, you'd see that it's starting to push up against the air hole that I have here, the little filter patch, because it can sense that oxygen. So if you were to grow inside your home, You can grow in your closet or you can grow in your basement. You can have like a wire shelf or like one of those indoor mini greenhouses with humidifiers. But you need to have proper air exchange. If you have a lot of CO2 in your home, then this won't work, unfortunately. You have to have, a lot of the newer homes, they have those HRVs, the heat recovery units that cycle that outside air. Unfortunately for me, I can't farm in the winter because my home doesn't really have that, and I grow mainly outside. But you can do the bags. So if you're able, it's kind of the secret code to mushroom farming. If you're able to crack it, to be able to farm year-round, you have to have proper air exchange. Mushrooms like to have room temperature, so like a room like this would be nice and warm, and then you give it all the moisture it needs inside the controlled bags or
So
any container.
can you help to set up the mini mushroom house?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Button mushroom.
Yeah, button mushrooms. You can do button mushrooms this way as well. You can do like in a Tupperware container. It's something called a monotub method. It's when you have, if you've ever seen commercial button mushroom farming, they have the large beds and then they have misters that mist the water on top. What you can do with these guys is you have like a Tupperware container and you put the lid on it and that traps the moisture inside. And then when it's fully colonized and white like this here, you open the lid very slightly and that lets the air exchange kind of come in, and then from there it will. Hey-o.
You grow enough for this you do.
Yeah.
But you show them more to marketing after that? How to grow it? When they
Yeah.
grown up, when it is grown up a lot, do you do marketing for that?
I do. So at the farmer's market, I'm able to grow. So part of I have a PowerPoint presentation where it has a walkthrough of my home setup. And so my setup at home for my market is I have a very large deck in my backyard. And the deck, you're able to walk down the stairs and you can stand up underneath. And what I've done is I've taken plastic and I've stapled it to the rafters to make a tent. And then I have an ultrasonic humidifier with a humidity controller that will humidify that space now to about 90% humidity all the time. And then in my garage, I have my lab where I have, it's called a laminar flow hood, which blows sterile air across my counter. And that's why I'm able to isolate all my cultures on the agar here. And I'll make these bags in my lab in the garage. And then I have to carry these bags. They're 5 pounds each, and so I'll do about 100 bags, by the way. That's a lot of work. I'll carry it into my backyard, and I'll put it in my tent. And I have racks. Then I slice the bags, and that's how I harvest it perpetually. If I was to do something smaller, maybe I'm just growing for my family at home, you could buy mini greenhouses, which is like a wire shelf, and it has a tarp that goes over it. And what you can do is you can get those cool mist humidifiers. They usually have them for children. And that will blow the cold mist inside that tent to keep it moist. And then you can have a fan to blow air outside to circulate the air. And you can be enough to grow for your entire family that way.
So you told you can buy shelves from the Costco?
Yeah, Costco.
They're very good.
You can buy any wire shelf. Any wire shelf will work as long as you can cover it in some sort of plastic, like a garbage bag or something, to trap the humidity, of course. And then the greenhouses that I'm talking about, you can find them on Amazon. They're like maybe $50 or so. You can get a small one. You can get a very large one. You can even, I use a lot of milk crates in my home because Shoppers Drug Mart leaves the milk crates out in the back, so I'll take some home. And if you put that in a garbage bag, it also works. Same way.
How long does it take to get
Yeah.
the harvest? Like when are you ready to
So at this point in the process, this took about 1 to 1.5 months starting from here. To get to here. It takes about 1.5 months to get to there. And then this can sit on my shelf for a couple more months before I'm ready to use it. When I'm ready to use it and I cut a hole in the bag, in about 1.5 weeks, I'll be harvesting. So if every week I put another 10 bags in my fruiting chamber, I'm able to cycle the fruiting and I'm able to cycle my harvest. So every week I can have a harvest. But if I keep this in the humidity, I can harvest again in about another 2 weeks or so. So after about 3 rotations of these bags, I'm harvesting the first rotation and it kind of compounds its way. And then before I know it, I have so much, I'm starting to throw them out because it's too much. The mushrooms, for me, for my market, I have to sell them within maybe 3 days or so before they start going too bad for me to sell. So what I ended up doing is I started saving these and dehydrating them. And that's what I have here. And this is what I've been doing with my dehydrated mushrooms. This is a rice mix, where at home you can just add water to this and simmer it on the stove, and it has all the seasoning and the dehydrated mushrooms. And you can have this for dinner. And this is how I've been selling all the waste product. It's not really waste, of course.
What is the iron content?
I'm sorry?
Iron content of mushrooms. Iron.
How much is the
Iron content.
B12, big time.
Lots of. The exact numbers, it changes by species, of course. They have quite a bit of iron. Also, what they grow on will affect a little bit of that as well.
They have a lot of proteins, amino acids,
Yeah.
and micronutrients, everything. Yeah.
What's the main name given to your shop? Prepared fungi game?
The fungi guy. Yeah, that's just a funny thing that I came up with. In Digicap, I came with the name in Digicap because myself, I'm Indigenous Canadian.
I can make you be changed. Fungi guy.
The fungi guy?
Yeah. Otherwise nobody will come. They say, oh, fungus is there, so I should be buying that.
Yeah.
We just have an idea.
That is the proper name.
Good. Name something.
What about contamination from
You can say
others?
baby mushroom, you can say like this and like that. Try and fungi. Okay.
Yes.
We have some wild fungi growing in our garden once in a while, and we're obviously not sure what they are, we throw them off. So what is the chance of contaminating the crop here with not so desirable mushrooms which are toxic or whatever?
That's an excellent question. So how do you know that if you buy this bag here, how do you know that that's not contaminated with a different species? That's your question. So I like to talk about mushrooms like they're people. If I give you a hug and I squeeze you really tight, do we become one person? We always stay separate. We're 2 different people entirely. So the cultures in here, they're an individual species entirely. And this species is only going to produce a mushroom fruit that looks like this here. Because I started on an agar plate, I'm able to physically see the different types of microbiology that happens, and I'm able to isolate by using a scalpel in a sterile environment. I cut that away, and I put that onto a new plate. And when I see that there is a single species of microbe on the plate, I'm able to then cultivate it to this point.
You can distinguish the species,
Yeah.
species.
No, if it's contaminated, it has different colors,
Yeah.
like green,
So-
purple, whatever.
Even
You can identify if it is contaminated.
Even with the different mushroom species, the mycelium, it looks like mold. All fungi kind of look like mold. Every fungi has what's called mycelium. That's that white wispiness before it turns green. The green on your mold, by the way, is the fruiting body of that species. Whereas the fruiting body for mushrooms is, well, an actual edible mushroom. But when you start practicing, you can start telling the difference between the different species just by looking at them, because they all have, it's almost like a fingerprint. They all kind of grow in their own specific ways. And when it gets to this point, and I can see the fruiting bodies growing, if any other species was to land in this bag, the established fungi will be able to defend itself. Once it gets to a certain growth point, it is able to create its own antibodies and its own immune system, and it's able to fight against other species.
But that's fine as far as protecting its own self.
Absolutely.
What about any toxicity which it transfer when you eat?
So when you plant something, like you plant tomatoes, you start with tomato seeds and you put them in the ground. Those tomato seeds are never going to be beets or potatoes or any other, it's going to be tomato seeds. The fungus that I start with is always going to grow that fungus, especially when I'm able to isolate it away. It's never going to turn into a different species entirely. It's only ever going to be what it is. That's how. A lot of the species that you find out in the wild, it started from spores. And the spores are able to travel continents. They're very, very small.
Microscopic. They are microscopic.
Yeah.
You can't see with the eye.
They've landed in your garden and through many years have established themselves there. And for that, they have that immune system, and that's why you're seeing it in your garden. If you were to take something like this and you were to bury it in your garden, this already has all of it established. It will be able to kind of carve its way into your garden and fight for itself. It can't change. This will never change into anything else once it's at this point.
That brings me to my next question. Once you create a bed, once you create an environment for one particular type of mushrooms, will they keep coming again and again every year?
As long as there's enough nutrients, absolutely. Yeah.
Nutrients are there.
Yeah.
And you don't have to redo the whole process of starting again on the mushroom cycle, or you can just...
No, not that long time. No, not that long, no.
There is a way you can. So if you don't protect the mycology, the fungus, it can die. That can happen. But if you're able to, because we have very cold winters, and the cold will kill it. If you were able to dig yourself a long, deep trench in your backyard, and you filled it with something very nutritious, like dead wood, like logs, big, thick pieces of dead logs, and you were to take this and you were able to cover the logs and then bury it deep, very deep, so that it doesn't freeze.
Or bring it indoors?
Or you can bring it indoors too, absolutely. That will colonize all of that wood in the ground, and will continue feeding off of that wood, the very dense wood, and it will continue to produce mushrooms because of it. This happens a lot in nature with fallen trees, actually. When a tree gets cut down, the root system is still in the ground. And sometimes, a lot of times, the mushrooms will find the stump, grow down into the ground through the roots. And from there, mushrooms will pop up all over in the forest.
So, like this is Ganoderma. We say in Punjab, Geddarpidi. It's a Ganoderma. So, it's a fungus. You can use it for soup. Am I right?
Yeah.
So,
it's very bitter, though.
Actually, it's destroying a lot of trees here too, in the forest. But it's medicinal. You can find its powder for migraine. So people are making good money just making powder of it, but otherwise it's parasitic. It's dangerous for the trees. So in Punjab, a lot of tallies like Jijifus trees, they have been destroyed by this fungus. But this is medicinal.
Really, you can eat
They sell the powder to have cure for the migraine.
But in India, nobody eats.
No, now they have started. So then it's
this
important.
was very big in China.
It's a fungus. It's a,
Yeah,
if you go to Dundas and Tomkin, there are Chinese stores. There are a lot of the bags like for the
reishi.
their medicine.
So
I've got this growing in my house,
Yeah.
but I don't know what it is.
Some are brown, some are white.
yeah, many different types.
How we can know this is a good for health?
It's
How we recognize that?
the last thing you want to do is see mushrooms out and go, I'm going to eat that, because you don't know.
Yeah.
There is maybe 5% of all mushrooms are deathly poisonous. They will kill you.
Yeah.
For plants, it's about 10%. It's a very big difference. There is a taxonomy to it. different ways of identifying the mushroom. There is a science. People go to very advanced college classes learning on how to identify different species of mushroom.
He means to say like बहुत ज़्यादा varieties हैं मशरूम की, hundreds, 100,000s.
Many. Many.
सभी बता रहा हूँ साथ साथ में. Mostly people are understanding.
Yeah.
हम जाते हैं वॉक करने, वहाँ पर मशरूम होते हैं, मतलब कई बार ऐसा होता है, देखने के लिए मशरूम.
No, don't touch those any mushroom, unknown mushroom. किसी unknown mushroom को don't touch it. They can be dangerous. They can be poisonous. Because here lot of edible mushrooms are available, plenty everywhere. So you are not to pick mushrooms from the wild.
Yeah. Part of the identification process is when you're looking at mushrooms in the wild, you have to know what you're looking for. And you have to know if that species has any lookalikes. Some species, they have, like the parasol, there's one called, if you look it up on Google, it's called the parasol mushroom. It looks like a big, skinny cap and a big wide umbrella. It's beautiful. It's a white mushroom and it looks like an umbrella. Sometimes they grow so big you can use it like an umbrella. There's two different versions of this mushroom. The one is very delicious. It tastes like almonds. It's very smooth, nutty. It's delicious. The second one is called the false parasol mushroom. And this mushroom is poisonous. It's not deathly poisonous, but the poison in the mushroom is designed to give you gastrointestinal distress. It makes you vomit. And it will be a constant vomit for a very long time. It's not fun. And so if you were to look for the parasol mushroom, you have to learn to identify it, but you also need to learn how to identify the lookalike. There's a few others, like the chanterelle mushroom, which it's like a little trumpet, a little orange trumpet, and it's probably the #1 mushroom that I sell at the market. There's one lookalike called jack-o'-lantern, which if you can tell the difference between the two, it's very obvious, but at the first glance, they kind of look similar. You have to be able to tell the difference. And if I didn't know the difference between them, I wouldn't be selling that mushroom because it can be pretty scary.
Some of them are very expensive.
Yeah.
And some of them are relatively.
Yeah. So why are they so different?
You won't be able to know what type of they are.
Yeah. So with mushrooms, there's like hundreds of thousands of different types of species. But we can classify them based on the role that they play in the world. There's primary decomposers as the first one. These are like the white button mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, even the reishi mushrooms here. Their role in society is to decompose things. They are the primary decomposers. They're usually the first to start breaking down that tree that fell in the woods into soil.
In a small pot, we can also grow it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they are primary decomposers, they grow on anything. They grow on grass, leaves, wood, compost soil. They grow on anything easily, no problem.
But the problem is we don't have any idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So because they grow on anything and they decompose so easily, one second.
Gentlemen, we are quite impressed by your knowledge regarding this mushroom. Generally, in a layman language, we feel mushroom is to be eaten. It is a dish. Now, what are the uses which you have explained all these things? Are they for eating or for show or for decoration?
Yeah. These rice mixes that I have here are for eating, by the way. It's very delicious. Yeah.
So what are the uses? Because you said poisonous.
Yeah, no. Everything here, nothing's poisonous, I promise you.
Listen, please.
Yeah. So the primary decomposer of mushroom.
My children like this one mushroom, but whenever he doesn't take. He doesn't take. He says,
Because
don't
once
give
in India, in our one city in Dehradun, some people ate mushrooms and they died.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
That's why the idea is in his mind.
So the number one cause of mushroom-related death comes from a mushroom called the destroying angel.
They were in the forest or,
Yeah.
then somebody
Yeah, and the destroying angel is a white mushroom. It's a solid white mushroom, and it grows very small, like this. And because this is the #1 cause of death, a lot of people, they see this mushroom and they think, I like white mushrooms, like button mushrooms, and they'll take that home and they'll eat it with their family, and they'll kill their entire family because of it. It's very dangerous. Yeah.
And then we order online.
Yeah, all these are non-poisonous, by the way. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So
Cultural.
grow with that relationship, and so because of that, they only grow in specific areas. This is mushrooms like black truffles. They only grow in Europe, like France, and they have to find them with dogs.
Expensive.
Yeah, very expensive because it only grows there. Kind of like with Italy, Parmesan cheese they only able to make it in Parmesan because in Parmesan they have the fungus in the air, and that's nowhere else in the world, and so they can charge a lot of money for it. That's why mushrooms like the chanterelle mushrooms are also very expensive because of that symbiotic relationship. The last species role is parasite mushrooms. These mushrooms attach themselves to living organisms, kind of like the reishi here. Reishi plays kind of that role as a parasite as well as a decomposer. There's another one called chicken of the woods, which kind of tastes like chicken. It's pretty cool. These mushrooms, they attach themselves to living trees, living organisms, and they will suck the life out of that very slowly to support itself and ultimately kill
You mean
that thing.
oyster?
Oyster mushrooms, no. It's chicken of the woods is one. There's a few others like the reishi here. And because of that, just like the symbiotic mushrooms, they only grow in very specific areas. There's a very good medicinal one called chaga. It's delicious and it's good for medicinal teas. That only grows on birch trees, the white trees. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. That's
I
right.
have one more question. You were talking, I think they probably are different. The wild spores, which we have to ferment our dough, for example.
Yeah.
That's totally different than
Yeah, that's like wild yeasts. So in the air, at all times, there's bacteria, yeast, and other fungi spores everywhere all at once.
There are lots of actinomycetes, viroids, virus की किस्में होते हैं viroid, actinomycetes, lot of thousands of spores in the air, and even on the plants, leaves.
And so the first thing that usually takes hold in something is bacteria. They're the fastest to grow. And then the yeast are very, very fast next to the bacteria. And then the yeast is able to create a very acidic environment and kill everything else. And that's why sourdough is very popular. Mushrooms are the slowest. Mushrooms, they take 3 times longer than all the other microbiology.
because they're not really acidic.
They're not acidic. They're very normal, actually. Yeah, they're very like the pH scale. If a 3 is very acidic, 9 is alkaline, 6 is water. Mushrooms is a 6. It doesn't affect pH whatsoever. The benefit to mushrooms is they are capable of growing in environments where other microbes can't grow. They grow in hostile environments. They're able to survive. And this is why mushrooms are able to thrive as they do. If I was to open up this agar plate and wave it around in the air, for sure bacteria will show up within a day. Mold will show up within 2 days. There will be no mycelium. It will just be completely gone. That's why it has to be sterile. But if I take a bunch of dead wood and I put it out in my backyard, and then I put this in that dead wood, that's going to grow. Nothing else will grow because that's able to survive in that environment without sugar. Yeah.
Okay, so that's done.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
मैं गया पिछले साल फार्मर मार्केट जॉर्ज टाउन, तो इन्होंने वहाँ डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन लगा रखी सारी अपनी स्टॉल. सो आई वेंट सेकंड टाइम, देन आई रिक्वेस्टेड हिम टू कम. Then I called him many times, so he is very busy. If
He's
you
very
go-
persistent.
If you go to Georgetown in farmer market next year, you will see
Starting June. June is when the
how
farmers
many
market
people they
starts.
buy. They love mushrooms, especially other communities. Our people, they don't even look at most of the.
Chinese, they buy.
Yeah, I know, but I'm talking about that stall.
Thank you.
Three colors appear to be there in the market, so what should we buy?
Yeah.
Even the seller has no idea which mushroom is good for us, and that is only a fungus or all that. You must be able to tell.
You grow enoki?
Enoki, I do. Yeah. I
Enoki,
do have
enoki, small mushroom like threads.
It's hard.
It's very good for soup.
It's hard. It's tricky. I've been playing with it. It's very particular with the environments it has.
Like
But
threads,
I do
white
have-
threads.
My son brings black mushrooms, and my husband says, no, don't put it. But I make it.
Now you can
Nice.
explain what are the benefits of eating mushroom?
So the benefits to eating mushrooms is it's a good protein substitute for somebody who doesn't like chicken or they won't eat beef or pork per se. Mushrooms, along with the protein, they also have a lot of vitamin D and B12, of course, as well. If you were to take raw mushroom and you were to cut it into pieces, any mushroom, and you leave it in your windowsill for 30 minutes, it will have about 2,000% vitamin D within that 30 minutes. And when you ingest that, you're going to get that vitamin D in your body. And you can't really do that with many other things.
We are vegetarian, pure vegetarian.
Mushrooms are very good for us.
Yeah, it's an excellent source. Absolutely.
Vegetarian is number one.
Yeah.
The chicken one has nutrition.
Yeah, the chicken one, it actually, when you chew it, it chews and it feels like chicken. And it's incredible.
How do you wash them? When you wash them, you take the stem out.
I trim the very end of the stem. Yeah. So like the white button mushrooms, they grow in manure, and it grows out of the manure, and then they pull it. There's a little bit of manure on the stem here. I'll just cut that little bit, and then with light water, I'll just rinse it. But things like oyster mushrooms, they grow on wood. It's very clean, so I don't have to wash those.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
I intend to start growing mushrooms at my backyard. How can you help us?
Yeah.
Besides draining and providing the
Yeah. So how I can help you grow mushrooms in your backyard is I can offer you different avenues to get into it. So you can, if you're interested in learning the microbiology of the syringe, I can provide you with all of the lab equipment and the lab training for you to do that at home. If you'd like to skip that part and just maybe you want to prepare your own straw, you want to make your own mushroom beds or so, I can provide you with a colonized grain spawn, which you can think of it like mushroom seeds for your home.
Can I just listen to that?
Yeah, I can prepare you with mushroom seeds to plant in your home, right?
I think as a first step, instead of starting from the very basic,
Yeah,
we would like to start at a simpler process at an intermediate.
absolutely. At the very least, work on your part. I can prepare you